Welcome to Pivot to Grow, where our philosophy is leap and grow your wings on the way up. Each week, we will bring not only our many years of experience, but also expert guests in many genres. Together, we will give you a blueprint on not only how to construct your new wings, we'll show you how to utilize them. We will do this with laughter, love, tears, compassion, friendship, and understanding. Here we go.
Hello, listening audience, and we are back with another episode. Gail has not ran away. She did come back from Hawaii. I think that was because I threatened. But anyways, hi, Gail.
Hi, Amelia. Yes, I'm back.
Oh.
You know, there are finger claw marks across the ocean.
And how was your vacation?
It was amazing. I will say it's the first time in my life I've ever really been on vacation. I have always worked when I was on vacation. I've always been, well, not always, because I've been with my husband for 19 years, but prior to that, if I wasn't working, I was also in abusive relationships, so I was always on guard. And so this was like, oh, I'm not going to work. I don't have anybody to report to. I'm just going to enjoy my husband and the beach. And that's what I did.
So nice.
I know.
Aww.
So what did I do? I sat my butt in a lawn chair. And when I didn't do that, I was walking someplace either to get coffee or gelato.
I am so jealous.
Yep, that was my vacation and it was fabulous.
I am just like so jealous. Oh, okay. Well, we are going to go kind of on a really cool trip today. I'm going to let you introduce our guest, and then we are going past, present, future, and everywhere else in between. So go ahead and introduce our exciting guest for today.
Thank you. I am first of all going to read her bio because she took the time to write it for us. And then I'm going to spin off of that because I know this joyful, loving woman personally, and I adore her. Michelle is an intuitive explorer focusing on all things past lives. In her early days, she had more than 80 clairvoyant readings exploring past lifetimes. She learned about previous incarnations with each of her children and extended family members. She has, since then, collected information on more than 100 of her own lifetimes, discovering a soul-deep connection with Norway, reconnecting with several past life husbands, and sourced the origins of some of her current life traumas. Joy is being able to see how past lives add value to current life experiences. Michelle loves being able to deep dive into what's blocking success and what can add value from past life and current life exploration. She loves delving into any and all past life stories and is humbled by the journeys her many clients have trusted with her. To quote Patty Aubery, Michelle brings sanity to the insanity. You are invited to explore Michelle's world. I'm not going to read this out because you wouldn't be able to write it down, listening audience, but you can go to our website and that will be posted there as part of Michelle's information. So my first question, girlfriend, is, because the title of our podcast is Pivot to Grow, and like you, we all got to do our own little pivot during this global reset, as I lovingly call it. However, you and your husband has agreed to this. God bless his soul. Someday I'm going to meet this man. So tell us how it came to be that you're living in a bed and breakfast every 30 days, I believe. Like, what was that process?
Wow. Is it really weird to say how exciting I find my bio listening to you? I'm kind of going, wow, what a great life that person's having. So thank you.
You're
Thanks
welcome.
for having me.
Thanks for writing it.
Oh, my pleasure. Wow, what a beautiful place to start. Thank you for asking, Gail. The long and the short of it all was, for the last 30 odd years, it's been all about raising children. And our youngest moved out in July of 2021. And we knew that once she moved out, the option for us to be able to sell our house and go and do things differently arose. So in the tail end of Melbourne in particular, who went into lockdown yet again at that time, we sold our house and realised that even though there's no work in the office for David, we got to still work. He was still working remotely, and there's just like, divine intervention maybe is a way that it kind of turned up. Our original plan was to move somewhere closer to the office and just do a 6 or 12 month rental, an unfurnished rental, and, you know, do the things, take our furniture with us kind of thing. And when we realised that we didn't actually have, sorry, it wasn't what we realised, because we knew we didn't have to have a space where David went back to the office. He's working remotely. Suddenly it was like, oh, hang on, we can think differently. So we decided to become gypsies. And at that point, we were only barely travelling out of state. So we just chose half a dozen locations that we wanted to stay in, and we tried to choose different styles of Airbnbs, and we just booked them in. And so we did 7 Airbnbs in the space of like 3 months, I think it was, all around the state. And then we're back in Melbourne, where the common denominator is the Airbnb needs to be walking distance to the office, because after all those years of doing driving an hour plus one way to the office from the suburbs, it's like, well, wouldn't it be awesome if we could do that for David? Like, David could have his option, his opportunity to, he loves walking. I don't get that, but he does love walking. And so he like, we've chosen places that I say, is that in the walking distance? And he goes, yeah, the map says it's like this far. It's not that far really, because he loves walking. And so that's what we're doing. So we're now doing a little bit more organised. It's like once a month, every month. So 28 to 32 days, I think, is our current pattern. We move to a different location. So we literally moved 5 minutes drive away from last month to this month, and from this month to the next month it's maybe 6 minutes drive away from where we're staying now. All of these places are just different locations, so that David gets the opportunity to have different scenery but still be able to walk to work. And we just decided we can do that because he's in the office 3 days a week. So why wouldn't we? But did we know that was going to be the thing? No, not at all. It was like sitting on the couch having a conversation and went, oh my gosh, we don't have to live where we said we were going to live. We don't have to do what we said we were going to do. We can do it this way. And so this is Airbnb number 9 since the end of October.
Wow.
And I think that, if you don't mind me saying, I think that the lesson, if you will, for all of us is that we all have that option every day of our life to just, we don't have to make that choice. And
Agreed.
just because we made that choice doesn't mean that we can't pick differently tomorrow because we decided that choice doesn't work for us anymore.
I agree 100%. I think the biggest challenge with that, or in my experience, the biggest challenge with that is we kind of get a picture of what things are going to look like, or a lot of people would say it's supposed to look like this. Mine's more, it's going to look like this. And then suddenly you realize, hang on, there's an option that we don't normally get a chance to even contemplate in our wildest imaginings. But the global reset allowed us to do that. And I think that's when you really need to pay attention to those signs that come in. I don't know where they come from. I know where mine come from, but it's like, oh, hey, yeah, we don't have to do it that way anymore. But it takes effort, and it takes a lot of energy. This is definitely not for the faint of heart kind of lifestyle. This constant readjustment of my thinking, but it's so, the opportunity to not do what we did before is what drives me. And I think when you understand what's important to you, what your values are, what gives you the greatest peace with all the things that you believe and feel, then it's much easier to be open to those changes. And you're right, it's not really a grand gesture. It's just a simple pivot of thinking, which we've had to do so much over the last couple of years.
And to honor yourself in doing that, because a lot of people don't, and they not only don't, they will hold on as steadfastly as they can to what is because of fear. I'm going to ask one more, and then I'm going to let Ilya ask questions, believe it or not. It's been a while since I've got to talk to you. My other question is, when, and maybe more than once, when and where have you been a gypsy before?
Oh. So in this lifetime,
No. I wanted to know if this is a theme throughout your lifetimes, or
yes,
Oh,
at
sorry
least.
to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, it's good. No, but it's a good question, because it's kind of like, well, how did I get to where I am now, where we wanted to do this? I like change, and I am inspired by change, and even though change is hard, new ideas, new visual pleasure, new things to look at and think about. So stimulating conversations, all of those kinds of things light me up. And it's kind of like that's my food source, for want of a better phrase. And then as you asked me that question, I was thinking, well, actually, my life has been quite gypsying anyway, not quite to the degree we're doing it at the moment, particularly compared with David's. But then when I think about, well, what drove me from before, I have at least 2 or 3 lifetimes as actual gypsies, which is, I think, why I claimed that term for this period, because it was like we were gypsies for the first 4 months, 3 to 4 months, and now we're kind of settled gypsies, because before we were just going wherever we wanted to go, anywhere, any when kind of thing, as in time period, not, oh God, that's just so confusing. Just forget that last bit. It's like, but now we're kind of doing, we're literally going from one spot to the next spot very deliberately and very actionably, because we have this work, I'm going to call it a constraint at the moment for David. But in past lives, it was like I just had this vision of us being in our little gypsy caravan, and one of my lifetimes I was adopted into a family, and I had this very clear picture of outside of the gypsy caravan, the campfire, cooking over the fire, my adopted family around me. And I think it was one of those incredibly, I had this great sense of gratitude for them, because they took me in when I was a different coloured skin. I was definitely not a gypsy person, but that was just one lifetime where it's like that gratitude was so incredible. The good feelings, I think, have travelled through from that, even though that ended up being a very dark story. But that's what I think I'm taking forward now. It's the magic and joy of doing gypsy life now. It goes back probably to then.
So I've had a reading with you, and I came to you very skeptical because I've had past life readings before. And the reason I was skeptical is I don't know if this has been Gail's experience, but usually when you have a past life reading, you always have, oh, you were the, Cleopatra, and you were Marilyn Monroe, and you were all, and so when I came to you for this reading, you were like, no, you were, I had a lot of common lives, quote unquote, common lives, which was great. That was the authentic reading. I was like, oh, okay, because that rang true. Because trust me, I am not the queen of Cleopatra, no. So it was very authentic. And we were discussing, you and I, why it was so important to understand what your past lives are for this life. And that's one of your big things, is learning about your past lives to help with this life. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, I can. What you were describing, Ilya, is, I think, I don't know if it is now, but it was a common, there are two common perceptions about past lives. The first one was it's really scary. And the second one was, oh, I must have been somebody really, like, oh, wasn't I someone really important? I want to be, because everyone wants their moment of glory and being important, being a celebrity in whatever way, to whatever degree. My exploration of it came about kind of, I think it formed kind of before I realised consciously it's what I was doing, but I didn't understand why I was so different from everybody else. And I had this opportunity to dig into past lives that I don't even really understand how it took. A little bit like, we can be gypsies in this part of our life where we didn't realise we could do that. So I guess it was one of those little moments that just popped in and went bing, and I went, oh. So when I was 14, a boy that I had a big crush on, I have to say, mate, we were having a conversation, and he just said to me, we've known each other before. And I'm thinking, this is a 14-year-old conversation. This is, you don't say those kinds of things. Like, where did that come from? And it was one of those little seeding moments where it came in, and it's just like, oh, okay. So I got dug into all the things that you weren't supposed to do. I wasn't allowed to. Society said, and my sort of family circumstances suggested that maybe I wasn't allowed to do the things that I wanted to do. I wasn't allowed to have an interest in witches. I wasn't allowed to have an interest in anything that was not normal. And of course, that's like, well, I'm sorry, but I'm going to do it anyway. But as I went through that process, when I hit my early 20s, I just couldn't work out why. People would say to me, good friends would say to me, but you need to do this, and you need to do things this way. And I said, but it doesn't feel right in the deepest part of me. And I felt like I was fighting all the time. And that started well, who am I? How did I get to be like this? Why am I so screwed up? That was pretty much my motivation. Why is it that the world I see through my eyes and my feelings is not the one that everyone tells me I need to be living? So put those two things together, the reincarnation and then the who am I because I don't feel like I fit. And the very first past life reading I had was to ask about my relationship with the boy from school. And my reader said to me, I don't do past life readings. She said, maybe you probably just need to have a regular reading. I said, no. Like, my legs walked me into this store. It was completely without me realizing, oh, so there's another one of those little moments from the universe. And I said, no, I need to understand this yearning. Why am I so different? Why am I not worthy? Why am I not deserving to have these things? And God love her, she set me on the path of understanding. She did take a risk with me by doing that. And that was where it started. And it was just like, oh, I literally just went, okay, now I get it. It makes sense. And I just grew it from there. So like tending a garden, I would have a reading because there was something going on in my life, my current life. And I say, right, what is impacting this? Not just what is the circumstances around what I'm living with now, but where does this come from? Why do I have this really difficult relationship with my dad? Oh, he had you beheaded in a past life. Oh, okay, that would do it. And it wasn't an anything. It wasn't a judgment thing. It really wasn't an anything other than getting to that feeling of, oh, okay, I can navigate now because I have an understanding. And that's what it is for me. Who am I? Why am I different? And how do I take these pieces that I'm gathering and integrate them into me? So moving down the track 30 years to where I am now. And it's like, in that period, I felt like maybe 95% of me was dark. I didn't understand me at all. And now I can say that probably I pretty much understand me completely. There's just one little chunk that's missing that will never be replaced. So it's always going to be a wound maybe, or a loss or something, but that's okay because I get it now. It makes sense for me.
And so you do this amazing gift. You give your amazing gift. You have a business that does this. Do you want to talk about what your business does?
It's constantly evolving, I have to say. Thank you. Yes. It's my impression of what being a reader was all about was to do what I experienced, which was a series of readings over about 8 years where I went in to have a therapy session or a counselling session. I don't understand why I'm feeling like this. So I would go and say, please tell me what it is I'm not getting, or tell me. I didn't really ever just explore the future. It was more a past thing to understand personal journey. Sometimes future stuff came up. And so I just assumed that that's what my business would be like. And it's actually evolved so much from that, because I used to think it was about addressing trauma and things that were people who had stories in this lifetime who didn't really understand why they'd come about. Like, why do people come in with the issues that they've come into when they're born, when they're born. I thought that was what I'd be addressing, which I still do, because it's one of the things I really feel very privileged to be able to do is that element. But then a couple of years ago, I also realized that we can look into past lives for what did we learn that we haven't necessarily switched on in this lifetime. So mad skills that we brought in, and we go, you know, that feels like I could do that, but I'm not sure if I should. I'm not sure if I can. Do I need to go and do some learning about that? But then in a past life, that's exactly what you did. Okay, it might have been 500 years ago, but the foundation of it is already there. And then you get this, oh, okay. It's like an aha. And you go, oh, I can do that. And then you just build from that. So it gives you confidence. So now it's kind of a mix of both, I guess. Not so much trauma, but more the being able to help people bring the magic is what I'm calling it at the moment. Bring the magic into their everyday work life in particular. It's like, oh, this is what I'm doing, and we're very serious, and it's very this. And I go, but where's the fun? Where's the joy? Where's the magic? Oh, and suddenly everything shifts. So that's what I'm doing at the moment, and working on a card deck, which is also a huge amount of fun.
So, but you just said something and it went, oh, okay, there we go. Because I believe that my consciousness is my consciousness. Jesus' consciousness is Jesus's consciousness, and he's may or may not be walking the earth right now in that consciousness. I don't know. So for me, it was always people wanted to be like Cleopatra or whatever. And it's like, I'm pretty sure she's got her consciousness, you know, and maybe that is you and you haven't awakened to it yet. But you had said something that indicated that, yes, I am a stream of consciousness. So I am carrying this knowledge with me, growing it always, because we're a stream of consciousness ever expanding. So I'm constantly growing. And so the past life piece helps me know I don't have to relearn how to write a book, because I happen to have written, you know, portions of the Bible back in, you know, whenever or whatever, but I wouldn't know that unless I tapped into your beautiful gift that you share with us. Yes?
Yes,
That was it.
most definitely. I
So
think
now, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think you has her consciousness, because I actually just recently had a client who looks, in the vision I had was he was working with Alexander the Great. And I did have a client a few years ago, a client and his brother, who were the princes in the tower, locked away in the tower, who died in part of the English history. And it's like, oh, wow. And it feels very different, but that's like, of all the readings I have had and I have done and all that, they're stories. And I go, oh, okay, I get that. So I think you're right, Gail. But it's not to say we haven't. But it's not to say we didn't work with them.
Exactly. Or we might have been besties with them. Who knows?
Precisely.
But it's like Ilya said, most of us want to think that we were Alexander the Great, or we were Jesus, or rather than thinking, you know, maybe I was that person that touched his garment.
Exactly. And I think it's like anything that we do now, even if you just look at how we're all connected through Jack Canfield, we no doubt in my mind whatsoever, we all knew each other in the past. So who's to say that we weren't this same group or the same collective in Jesus's time, and we were witnessing what was going on. I know that that's part of my story. It's not something that's significant to me, because that's not what I'm about in this lifetime, but I know that it was there. There's a whole lot of those collective times through history where we would have turned up together doing that. So just the fact that we weren't Alexander the Great or Cleopatra doesn't mean that we weren't. Well, I was in the inner circle with Mary, Queen of Scots. And it's like, well, you know, what 7-year-old child has an affinity with Mary, Queen of Scots? Well, why is that? And it's like, oh, I was part of the inner court with her. It's like, did I see much of her? No, because she was never in Scotland, and I was in Scotland. But that's that they still have a presence and an influence. So therefore that's how we kind of take a little bit of that energy maybe, and it filters through into us, like a couple of little like glitter pieces come through. And that's how we have that connection of oneness, I believe.
Absolutely. And do you think that we travel as soul groups? Because I know some people believe that, you know, there are groups of us, like you said, the three of us and the Canfield family probably is a soul group, depending on how close we are in the Canfield family, and then you get, you know, Jack's inner circle. They were probably in. So yeah.
I do. And I love hearing you ask me that, because the pictures that are going through my head were like, it's a little bit like what happens in this life now. In my experience, we are more than likely connected with our immediate family group. So I have a husband and 3 kids, and I know we have all reincarnated together more than once, not always all 5 of us, but there's a lot of connective pieces. So David and Kels, my daughter, have a stronger past life connection. My eldest Daniel and I have a really strong past life connection as sort of like mother and son, but also as husband and wife. And so when you look at that, and you kind of go, well, that kind of is a no-brainer. But then you meet people that are kind of like thinking the things that you think, and are inspired by the things that you're inspired by. And then you get to have conversations, as I am with the both of you. And it's like, oh, it's so easy. And that feeling is what says to me, we have done this before. It's like, how can I meet somebody that I have never crossed paths with, would never have crossed paths with if I hadn't left my country to go and do something with Jack Canfield? How would I have met you guys? It's like, oh, hello. So it's like almost a group for a season. And so if that's the case, then we must be connecting through a whole lot of amazing groups in our lifetimes. If we've had, like, oh, you have to have this 10 lifetimes, you could have 1,000 different groups of people that you connect with. Some more connection, more deeply connected, and some less deeply connected. And so, yes, I do believe that we incarnate together, also because we can learn things together. So on the other side, when we're choosing where we're going to go for our next lifetime, we were all probably sitting in our own little spaces on our own little couches going, you know, I really need to go and learn there at that time with that person. And we didn't know we were all going to do that. And then we'd look around and go, hi, didn't know I was going to meet you there. So yes, I do think that that's likely. Maybe not quite as cartoon-like as what I just described, but
I think that was brilliant. So tell me, just so you know, totally off subject. However, I have changed my GPS in my car, or on my iPhone that I connect to my car, to Australian. So it sounds like you direct me through traffic.
Love it.
But back on task. Tell us about the card deck that you referred to that you are making.
So one of the realizations since we have been doing this Gypsy Life is I have been exploring past lifetimes since I was 14. So it's over 40 years worth. And we're having a lot of conversations about what does the future look like, and why. So my next part of my life plan is to relocate overseas so that I can go to all the places I've had lifetimes. I want to go and connect on location with those stories and kind of visit with my past life self. And when I was sort of I was talking this out with David, and I was going, it doesn't feel like it has any substance. It just feels like it's a little bit like box checking. Okay, really nice boxes and really nice, you know, experiences. But what is it I've learned over this 40 years that may be helpful, or how can I sustain that? So when you can't talk to me, you know, rather than reading my book, there's another option. And I came up with the idea that I'd like to create a card deck with it. And I thought, oh, that's a fun thing to do. So fun is a very weird choice of words from that point of view, because it's unbelievably, amazingly fun and ridiculously, unbelievably, crazily hard too. But I wanted to create a deck that kind of captured all of the knowledge and the experiences and the insights that I have, that puts it into one place so that I can then use that to travel with. So it was really a personal tool. I wanted to create like a guidebook, or be my own tour guide. And that kind of felt like it was a legacy project. So if I've invested 40 years just wrapping it up with journeying overseas and going to the different places I had lifetimes, just didn't quite feel like enough to celebrate or acknowledge what I had been doing. So I thought, oh, a card deck's a good thing to do. So I'll create that. And then that felt a little bit thin on the ground as well. And so then my next part of that was like, I need the joy and the fun of why I adore doing readings and I adore this research. How do I get that? And it's through conversations. And so suddenly it went from me, I'm just going to create a card deck and it's going to be done by October. And it's like, yeah, we'll just capture that to this beautiful, amazing, incredible, humbling, privilege-filled, extraordinary process of actually talking to, having conversations with people I've done readings with or people I know about a specific card message, about what their insights are. And it felt to me, it went from just being a very selfish project, like just Michelle and Michelle's experiences, to something that was a much more kind of global thing. And the gift of it all is I have learned so much from my friends and my clients. I interpret everything very in the darkest way possible. It's like, yep, there's trauma with that. That's where we're going. And then I have a conversation with someone and I go, oh, wow, I hadn't thought of it like that. It's a collaboration, but I'm in the driver's seat, but I'm also the student. And it's just like, yeah, this is my legacy. This is why I'm creating the deck. Just to create one deck, just for me to use as a tool to travel with. That's where it's at the moment.
Oh, I'm hoping that you actually put it out to the mass market, because I will be the first one in line. I'm sure Gail will be right behind me or next to me fighting me, but we will be there for it. So.
Thank you.
So my question for you is, as a culture, if we had been talking about these topics even 50 years ago, 100 years ago, we probably would have been stoned to death. 50 years ago, we probably would have been sitting in an asylum together, each of us sharing our meds in straitjackets, trying to escape together. But as we're moving forward, and it seems like we're going faster and faster, as a whole, the collective conscious of the universe seems to be accepting more and more of this. And we're accepting new ideas, new thoughts, talking about it. Why do you think that is?
I think it's got a lot to do with the time and the place. So this is the first time in recorded history that we have the opportunity to think expansively, to think outside the box, to explore things, because it's not like our days are taken up completely with, we just have to wash and we have to bake and we have to tend our land and we have to focus on survival. We actually have space now to do that. I think that we have also, if you look at history with the kind of rhythm of history as we go from, if you believe in Atlantis or you relate to Atlantis at all, there's this idea of the most futuristic, everything is possible, telepathic communication kind of reality. The fact that people are creating things like Star Trek and Stargate and those similar sci-fi shows on television says to me that people are thinking in an imaginative kind of way. And then we got to the point where the pandemic almost is staged, that's like the universe staged an intervention. So is that maybe an opportunity for us to, oh, you know what we can do? We have to do things differently. So that's my first thing from my personal point of view, or reasoning for this, is the world has to be different, because what we were doing before apparently wasn't working, and it's still not really working, particularly just what I've noticed in my country. But it's like, well, if we were going to do things differently, what might that look like? And when you have people like Jack Canfield who says, what's your audacious goal? Like, we weren't using those words before. It's like, oh no, you will fit into this box and this is the only way it's going to go. Well, flower power, you know, psychedelic drugs, ridiculous fashions, the Eades, you know, all of those things. So we're cutting back all of these layers and we go, no, no, no. And then we got the pandemic and it's like, no, no, no. I think it's a time where you get to dream, imagine and create, as compared with those of us who were dreaming in secret 50 years ago. And now we get to dream out loud because we have these conversations. When I first started really digging into past life stuff, my books about all the rare handful I could find were hidden away on a shelf in my bedroom where nobody could see them except David and me. And then it went to having the conversation in the schoolyard with one of the parents of one of my kids' friends. And she looked at me like I had literally grown another head. And it was like, okay, still not the time. To then I'm on Facebook and I do past life readings live. It's like the world has evolved. It's ready for us to start doing those things. And I think I don't want to use the word obligation, but I kind of want to use the word obligation. There are so many people who have been waiting for this period to say, okay, hey, there's kinder way to do things. There's a more compassionate way to do things. There's a more inclusive way to do things. And that's where I think we're at. I think we have incarnated at this time because we're all doing something that is going to create fundamental change, whether it just be a tiny bit or something really huge. And they're the people that I'm experiencing in readings. So I think it's time, place, and it's time to do something different, because we get to pivot after the pandemic. If we don't take this opportunity, it's like, what could happen next?
Don't say that word. Never
Yeah,
ask
no.
that. Never ask that. Never ask.
Well, and I was going to say, because you look at some of the things that are happening now, and it's like, I'm old enough to say, okay, we've already done this dance.
Yes.
Let's do it differently. And so, and I, like you, Michelle, I think that's why we picked this time to be here.
Agree. It feels to me like we're the bridge between what our parents grew up with and what our kids can do. I feel like I have one foot in the old world, and then I have one foot in the millennial world, and it's kind of like I speak to my daughter and I go, oh my gosh, I can't quite keep up with this. It's like, let me just get my brain expanding. But they don't have a clue of what it was like before. They don't understand how everything was hidden. And it's like, there's a world pandemic and we know what was taking place in all of these different countries. We get, the media shows us things that take place in, like, do you not have to have a map of the world somewhere at your fingertips to work out where these countries are that you didn't know, but those people are just like us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part where I kind of go, I have some insights on this. I'm cleaning up emotional space junk. That's my motivator. People don't know what I'm doing. If nobody ever spoke to me again, they wouldn't know that I was doing that. But I want to heal the stories from people's past lives so that they get to incarnate again with maybe not a clean slate, but at least not all the sharp edges of the things that they're bringing through. And it's kind of like, that's behind the scenes. What about the people who have the opportunity to change things like right up, like climate change or energy use or whatever it happens to be? We get to do that now because we have the ideas and the stability, the exposure to the old ways, and we're feeding out this, creating a space for the kids who are coming through, young people, millennials, whatever you want to call them, so they'll run with it. They don't have to reinvent the wheel either. And we're showing them how.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, ladies, I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Anytime that I get to be in Michelle's space, I take that opportunity. I cannot tell you the energy that she emits. It's amazing. If you are looking to learn about past lives, get a glimpse into the future, I can't recommend Michelle enough. If you want an honest reading, because I've had a reading with Michelle, and boy, is she honest. Sometimes I needed some chocolate afterwards, but that's okay because I appreciated it. And I said, be brutally honest. But seriously, I can't recommend you enough. Gail, any final words from you?
Well, I would echo everything that you have said, Ilya, and I would just say to Michelle, I love you to pieces, girl.
Oh, thank you so much, ladies. This is, Ilya, chocolate is definitely on my, please make sure you indulge chocolate and wine after a reading. Definitely in my well-being kit. And yeah, I will always be honest, because I get really freaked out when people don't tell me like it is. Like, tell me, let me cry, but tell me like it is, because then I can do something about it. So thank you for mentioning that, and agreed, Gail, right back at you.
All right. So if you want to book a session with Michelle or learn more about Michelle, please go to pivottogrow.org, and you will find all of Michelle's bio. Her beautiful face is going to be there. If you want to see this on YouTube, we will be up on YouTube. You can see us interview all of our, I kept noticing I had a hair sticking up, so you'll notice all of those fun facts with us. And please like and review us on your favorite listening station, podcast, so that we can move up and get this message out to more and more people. Ladies, it was such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The views, information, or opinions expressed on this YouTube channel and podcast are solely the views of the individuals involved and by no means represent absolute facts. Opinions expressed by the host and guests can change at any time. Pivot to Grow does not verify the accuracy of the information contained in the YouTube channel and podcast and is not responsible for this information. Pivot to Grow and its hosts assume no responsibility or liability for any errors or omissions in the content of the YouTube channel and podcast. The information contained on the YouTube channel and podcast is provided on an as-is basis with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness. The information published on this podcast and YouTube channel is for informational purposes only. Any reliance you place on such, you do at your own risk. The information provided is not meant to be a substitute for professional, legal, medical, mental health, or financial advice. If you require professional services, it is your responsibility to seek it out from a licensed attorney, mental health practitioner, physician, or financial services professional. In no way is the information provided meant to be a substitute for medical or psychological advice. This information does not serve to diagnose, treat, or provide a cure for any condition you may be experiencing. Pivot to Grow does not claim to and will not be held responsible for diagnosing, treating, or curing any physical or mental health condition. This podcast and YouTube channel does not take the place of listener's healthcare professional. Under no circumstances should listener stop seeing his or her healthcare professional. If listener decides to take action based on the coaching and advice he or she receives from Pivot to Grow or a guest on Pivot to Grow, listener does so at his or her own risk.